What is commonly accepted as something that everybody knows and surprised you when you found somebody who didn't know it? My dad was 65 years old at the time for this conversation, and we had a big family meal with my sister, her mister, gran, me and my parents. We were having sausages, and there was one left. He said, "Does anyone want the last sausage?" I said, "I'll rock, paper, scissors you for it." He stared at me blankly for a few seconds and was like, "What?" And that was the day I discovered that not only had my father no idea how to play rock, paper, scissors, he had never even heard of it. That Microsoft will not call because you have a computer virus and ask for €350 to remove it. There was a 28-year-old guy pronounced Colonel as it was spelled, as opposed to how it's properly pronounced, like Colonel. To make matters worse, his boss was a lieutenant colonel. Source: me. It was me. I'm the freaking grown idiot who didn't know how to freaking pronounce Colonel. Everyone should know that the eyes will not call demanding money from you. One of my coworkers spent an hour the other day arguing with scammers over a made-up debt, then finally called the eyes to make sure. Don't know if it counts, but my ex thought owls only existed in Harry Potter and fairy tales. I actually argued with her for almost a year over this. She refused to believe it. Since many of you are asking and this is getting more and more upvotes, I got through with her once I started telling people about it. She learned the hard way, by humiliation, that no one was gonna agree with her. But you kinda deserve it when you argue with your BF despite video, image and biology textbook evidence. I even looked for a zoo or similar where we could see one live. My friend was an environmental science major. At one point, he uttered these words, "Yeah, I think spiders might be my favorite mammal." Apparently he thought that, because they have hair, they are mammals. I bring this up every chance I get. Girl at work thought the Kentucky Derby was in a different location each year. We had it on during work, and she made some kind of comment about how it was so nice that the Kentucky Derby was actually in Kentucky this year. They must all be so thrilled. A few months ago I found out one of my best friends thought all houses were made of brick, and that they were covered over with siding. When we tried to tell him he was wrong, he said, "How do you think the walls stand up? Wood. They are made of wood." Had a buddy I lived with in college that I taught how to boil water. He seriously had no idea it was just put water in a pot and apply heat. Thought you had to add salt to it or something. He's an attorney now. My mom is 75, and just last week she was shocked because she saw a helicopter hovering in place. I had to explain to her that they don't need to keep moving like a plane. The reason the moon is bright at night is because the sun's rays are reflecting on it. A friend in my engineering course had no idea that islands are attached to the earth, not floating. We elect some really educated people to Congress. During a House Armed Services Committee meeting held on the 25th of March 2010, Representative Hank Johnson, a Democrat from Lithonia, Georgia, questioned Admiral Robert Willard, commander of the U.S. Pacific Command, about a proposal to move 8,000 Marines from the Japanese island of Okinawa to the U.S. Pacific Island territory of Guam. In the course of that questioning, Rep. Johnson expressed concern that adding thousands of Marines and their families to Guam might cause that small island to tip over and capsize. I have a friend, a grown man, that didn't know pickles were once cucumbers. I guess he thought pickles existed naturally in the wild. That the Titanic is a film about a real event, not just a film. Someone I know stated that she didn't realize that hurricanes don't have a gender identity. Somehow she thought that there were male and female hurricanes, rather than an arbitrary naming system. A middle-aged, American-born ambulance driver asked me who won the Civil War. If I had $1 for every time I heard what's Obama's last name, man, I'd have at least $4. My husband didn't know the look left, right, then left again rule for turning and driving. I mentioned it once. About a week later he let me know, wow, that trick really works well. More people should do that. I work at a university. I was talking with a student about cosmology and was surprised when she asked if our moon was bigger than the earth. Then, I was shocked when she asked if the sun was bigger than the earth. How to swim. I assumed that in most Western countries learning to swim was like learning to walk. You just do. Turns out that in the US and some European countries swimming isn't all that obvious. First time someone told me they don't know how to swim, it felt like they were telling me they didn't know how to count to 10. It was baffling. My family member thought Mount Rushmore was a natural occurrence and that it just so happened to look like 4 of our most important presidents. She was in her 40s when we told her otherwise. Women don't pee out of their vag. Rowley I was rowley. My friend was surprised when he found that out at age 25. Someone I know insisted on emailing NASA to confirm that it was safe to watch the latest solar eclipse on the television or a computer screen without safety glasses. That you don't wear white to a wedding unless you're the bride. Our friend showed up in a white dress and everyone ragged on her for it. To which she said, I wanted to wear my Greek dress. To which the bride said, I wanted to wear my wedding dress. Fight ensued. That the North Pole exists. I legit had a friend that believed it was all made up along with Santa. Taxes. Not just the rates or anything. That they exist. I was working in a call center for a telecom and got a call from a lady trying to figure out what these extra charges were for and what the company was using them for and why she was lied to about her price point. I had to explain to her about taxes, which she had never heard of. She was in her 30s. My friend didn't know you're supposed to at least try to take your birth control pill at around the same time every day. She said she'd take it in nights, then the next morning, and then wait all the way till the next night to take it again sometimes, and would frequently poke fun at me for having a daily reminder for mine. A friend's dad once said, how is the table so wet, in reference to the cold glasses of water on it. His wife said it was condensation, and he replied, I'm not familiar. How to read. I've met more than one old person that doesn't know how to read. Most can recognize numbers, though. I had to explain to a grown freaking woman what a double negative is. She was sending an email and wrote, you didn't never sent the report I asked for. After explaining what a double negative is, she changed the email to you didn't not never sent. Yes, she wrote sent the report I asked for. I didn't correct her that time. Just let her hit send. I was way too old when I found out that my grandparents were my dad's parents. I just thought that every family was assigned an older couple to take care of. I was older than I should have been when I figured it out. My dad said, what do you want for dinner, Mom? And it clicked. That trees keep growing bigger till they die. They don't just stop at maturity like people do. This dude had a master's in environmental science and worked in vegetation management. Before you write a word that starts with a vowel, you use an instead of a. I used to just pick and choose at random and hope it's right. I've had to explain marginal tax rates to people on a number of occasions. As a public service to the people who don't know, a fair few people think that when you go up to a higher tax bracket, you'll end up paying the higher tax rate on your entire income, an idea that is often pushed by less than scrupulous employers as a reason why you don't really want that pay increase. Because you'll be worse off. You won't. You only pay the new rate on the money over the threshold. If the tax rate is 10% below PS 20,000 and 20% above PS 20,000 and you get a pay rise that takes you to PS 21,000, you won't pay that 20% on everything PS 4,200. Instead, you'll pay 10% on everything up to the cutoff point. 10% of PS 20,000 is PS 2,000 and 20% on everything above it. 20% of the remaining PS 1,000 is PS 200, which gives you a total tax bill of PS 2,200, with very few exceptions, mostly related to means-tested benefits. You're going to be better off taking the pay rise, even if it pushes you into a new tax bracket. This is also why progressive tax structures are better for the vast majority of people. Rather than just a flat tax, you'll almost certainly be worse off financially under a flat tax structure. Just a few weeks ago I had to explain to a friend of mine who Hitler was. Poor girl had no idea What baffled me the most was that she is actually a straight A student, but it turns out she's completely ignorant of everything outside of school textbooks. My husband didn't know the US Postal Service delivers mail every day, except Sunday. Every time I asked him to get the mail, he'd loudly protest that he got it yesterday. I would tell him yes, go get it today, and somehow he was always in, or that I knew mail would he deliver that particular day. We finally had a fight one day when he refused to get the mail while I was waiting for an important letter. I told him I've been waiting for every day's delivery, and he was shocked that USPS is a daily thing. At the age of 33. That you actually have two pipes in your throat. One girl I knew freshman year thought that down the wrong pipe was just an expression. I knew an otherwise fully functional and capable young man who didn't know how to tie his shoes. He'd just use Velcro, never bothered to learn, or couldn't get it. How to read a clock. How can you not know that? That ponies aren't baby horses. You know how, when you close a cardboard box, by folding one tab over the next, and tuck the last one in, so it stays closed. I had to show a 50-year man how to do that last week. He'd never seen it before. I'm surprised how many people don't realize what a carbohydrate is. Like, a lot of people don't understand that a normal carb, like in bread, is just a more complex form of sugar. It all gets broken down into sugar. Like, I learned that in 4th grade, where they gave us crackers and tried to show us how saliva breaks down, and the crackers would start to taste sweeter. I always thought this was very basic knowledge. I was delivering some powdered formula to a nice lady and told her it needed to be reconstituted with water 1 part powder to 2 parts water by volume. She didn't know what a part was and kept insisting that I provide her with a particular unit of measurement. So I had to explain the concept of ratios to someone with a PhD. Windows had a built-in calculator. So many people I've worked with don't realize this. They'll be sitting at a computer and get up to do a calculator. Just to be clear, it's not that they prefer a regular calculator. They do not know there is one in Windows. What a potato is. Played Trivial Pursuit with my family a few years back, and my brother pronounced beans as bay once. He wasn't joking. He's also an avid WoW player and pronounces Q as Kiwi. Literally realized today that pumpkin spice lattes do not contain pumpkin. It's the spice from the pie. I surprised myself with my own stupidity. Just dealt with a roommate who moved here from rural North Carolina, but acts like he's from another planet. Housemate, the drivers around here are really scary. Me, yeah. It takes a bit to get used to driving around here. Don't worry, you'll get better with practice. Housemate, I mean the other drivers are really unreasonable. Me, yeah. People tend to be in a hurry and ignore a lot of traffic laws. You will just have to adjust to them. It will come with time. Housemate, I mean, I was driving only 5 under the speed limit in the left lane on 35W and everyone was honking and swearing at me. Me, around here, the left lane is the fast lane / passing lane. You can't go under the speed limit in it. You shouldn't even go the speed limit in it. Housemate, that doesn't make any sense. I don't understand why they do that around here. I mentioned the fact that Santa wasn't real as part of one of my atheistic rants in 7th grade religion class. I know. Edgy, right? And some girl screamed at me and ran out crying because she still thought Santa was real. In my defense, I thought every kid knew that by the age of 12 over 13. Oops. I work with a veggie slicer that has a 10-inch blade in it that rotates at roughly 3 miles an hour. I've had to explain to a 19-year-old that shoving your hand in the machine while it's on and the blade is moving is a bad idea. My fiance didn't know ham was from a pig. Basic geography. Like, when people have no idea where France is, what do they imagine when reading the news? In my senior year of high school, we were talking about the Holocaust in my IB Global Politics class, and one of our classmates didn't know that the Holocaust was real. She thought it was fiction that only existed in movies. A woman I worked with who believed all bears walk upright all the time as their norm, not that they can't. When I questioned this, she cited the cartoon Yogi Bear. A pregnant woman who didn't know what fetal alcohol syndrome was. Clicking a link with the mouse wheel button will open it in a new tab. I've worked in it for 10 years and most of my colleagues still right click or hold the control key. The way crockpots work. Had a room at once unplug my crockpot, leaving me without dinner for the day. When confronted, he told me that it's common knowledge to unplug everything when you leave. I responded saying, yeah, but this is a crockpot, man. His response, with a completely straight face, he just said, I don't know what a crockpot is. Don't talk to me like that. I couldn't believe I had to have a conversation about this newfangled device, stating that its sole purpose was to be left on while you're out. He just got mad and told me not to ever use it. Seriously, what the frick? I remember that time they did a news story about how a high percent, can't remember how many, of primary age kids in the UK didn't know chips were made from potatoes. I always knew, because my nan would cut them in the living room while watching TV before dinner, so I saw where they came from. It never occurred to me that other people had never seen their parents make chips from scratch, as they had only ever gotten them from frozen in bags and boxes. That not all Caucasians have blue eyes. I've had people tell me they are jealous that we all have blue eyes, while looking at Ken in the face. I don't have blue eyes. I have dark brown eyes. I was at a graduation and the MC asked the audience to stand for singing of the Star-Spangled Banner. The woman next to me asked, "What is that?" My bafflement left me speechless. That they need to use blinkers whenever turning or merging. 1 street comes from First Street, 2 ND comes from Seco ND, 3 road comes from The Road, 40H comes from 40H. On Reddit nonetheless. It had something like 80 upvotes. Lost a little respect for Reddit that day. For the first 17 years of my life I did not know shrimp have legs. I grew up in a landlocked state and refused to eat seafood. My brother had a seafood allergy and I decided I didn't like seafood, I guess. One day my friend was telling me about a barbecue she'd attended and how the food was really good. They even had shrimp with the feet still attached. I sat in silence for a beat before exclaiming, "Shrimp have feet." I honestly thought they just sorta shrimped around the seafloor, like inchworms. I didn't know how to use a whipped cream bottle until I was 12 because my parents never bought it. That was an awkward party. It's a cowlick in your hair, not a colic. I felt like an idiot. You don't have to be Catholic to be buried in a Catholic cemetery. These days it's common for people within one family to belong to different faiths or no faith. Non-Catholic spouses and family members of Catholics can be buried together in a Catholic cemetery. So I was surprised when a guy who's Protestant told me that he'd have to be buried in a non-Catholic cemetery and his Catholic wife buried apart from him in a Catholic cemetery. They actually believe that. I had a buddy who had just turned 21. We decided to go to the store and grab some snacks and a 6-pack and hang out. We get back in the car and he starts opening one of the bottles. Me, dude, what are you doing? Him, we can just opening these and start drinking on the way home, right? Me, no, that's called drinking and driving. Yeah, no, like a crime. That can put you in jail. I could not believe what he was doing. One of the hardest times I've ever laughed. He's a missionary in Africa now. I met a guy at work who knew of classic Black Sabbath and Ozzy Osbourne, but didn't realize that Ozzy was the lead singer in that band. That veal is baby cow, like, what did they frickin' think it was? An animal called veal. About 50% of the till subreddit posts. I've met tons of people who don't even know how long it takes for the earth to go around the sun. I am not kidding. That MLMs are always bad. They just are. No good can come from it. I taught a 9th grade general science class, which was basically for all of the kids that failed 8th grade science. We started talking about biology and what classifies things as living. Some were shocked to hear that plants were living creatures. In 9th grade, that was a rough year. Nobody besides you owns a poop knife. That there is a little arrow next to the gas pump symbol on your dash that tells you what side the car is filled from. I have had to point this out to at least 3 adults in the past 10 years or so, including my wife. How to use the toilet. I met a very poor community of people that did not use the toilets even having them functional at home. They just never were taught how to use, and instead did necessities in shopping plastic bags, and threw them at the street. That one side of the road is the odd number houses and the other side even. I couldn't believe it when he said he didn't know. Basic food safety. My fiance wasn't aware that food cannot sit out at room temperature for a long time. A year or so back she made crock-pot chili, and the crock went from warm to off around 8 PM that night. She left it out all night, and when I got home it was still sitting on the counter at room temperature. At 7:30 PM the next night, she was planning on serving it to the kids the next day. Cooked meat sitting on the counter for almost 24 hours, and she was mad that I didn't put it in the fridge for tomorrow. I try to be gentle with her and teach her not to kill the kids, you know, because she was raised mainly by an abusive father that essentially cooked steak and fries every night, that he didn't get fast food. She never learned anything about cooking until she was in college. How basic gardening works. You sow seeds in the spring and harvest food later in the summer. We were working in our garden, and I had to explain to a friend that yes, salad, peas, potatoes etc. that we were sowing in Maine would produce crops that can be harvested later in the summer. I guess her logic was that they would be harvested the following year or maybe later. A lot of people seem to be very detached from how food is produced. There was this new girl at school and we were trying to have a conversation with her. One of my friends asked her if she had any siblings. She quickly replied, I don't have siblings. I have a brother. That in Australia people speak English. Yes. I was asked what language do people speak in Aussie. My girlfriend thought a rainy day fund was a jar people kept money in, so they could go shopping when it rained. She was almost 40. You should upvote the question when you answer it on Reddit. I'm from MA, was in Discord voice with some gaming friends. Somehow we got to shooting the crap about where we are all located. I wish I could remember the specific reference, but I mentioned some regional store or activity. One of the guys was like, never heard of that, and I responded with, oh yeah, kinda forgot that was a New England thing. His response, wait what? You don't have an English accent? Dude did not know that the northeastern United States region is called New England. I watched my roommate the other day use metal tongs to get his toast out of the toaster. We had a talk after that. A smooth transition from one topic to another is a seg, not a segue. I was really surprised that so many people didn't know about the NSA/FBI/CIA spying on people. I honestly thought it was common knowledge that it had been going on for at least 20 years before Snowden came along. Same with Area 51 being confirmed/admitted. I thought it was well known that it was there. My dad had a middle-aged coworker who always said he hated tamales. Upon inquiry as to why this was so, he said he didn't like how the outer part tasted, the corn husk. This was at a company picnic, and tamales were present. So my dad showed him how to just eat the inside part of the tamale. The guy loved them. So it was me who didn't know something. My friends were very surprised when they discovered that I didn't know that yogurt and butter were made from milk. I can't explain why I didn't know that. I guess I just never thought about it. They were both horrified and found it hilarious. And I'm pretty mortified now that I had no idea that cows make milk for human beings to drink. I had a person tell me that's why God put them on earth. Give me a freaking break. A friend of mine recently discovered that Powerade and Gatorade are not the same thing. She thought Powerade was just a flavor of Gatorade. Trees are plants. That the Declaration of Independence was adopted in 1776. One of my friends was genuinely surprised and thought it was in the late 1800s. Everyone says I'm lying, and I wish I was. We were having dinner outside one summer, discussing the news. This was back in the early 2000s when one of the Carolinas was fighting over their right to have a Confederate battle flag, stars, and bars fly over their capital. My mom brought up the number of people protesting it. My brother's new wife, his second wife, chimed in. I don't understand why so many black people are at these protests, given how many people died under that flag to help them. Total silence. You could hear everyone slowly turn their head in a what the frick did it just say motion at her. We are not southerners by any stretch of the imagination. Everyone was painfully confused, but didn't want to embarrass her any further. Subject changed. TL. Doctor, my northerner sister-in-law genuinely believes that the Confederacy fought to help black people. I've met lots of Australians, lovely, friendly people, good idiots as many would say. For whatever reason, about 80% of them have no idea wolverines are real animals. They all thought it was just some fictional beast made up for Hugh Jackman. Multiple times I had to Google wolverines in front of them to prove I wasn't just messing with them. I'm a cop, so this is even worse for me. Me and my team were grabbing donuts at like 4:30 in the morning. Right as our spot was doing all their prep, and we got real fresh donuts. I watched the employee use some kind of tool to punch out the center of the donut. So you had a circular donut with the hole in the middle and the leftover piece of dough. That's when it clicked to me that the donut holes were from that center piece that was cut out. Needless to say, my partner, corporal and sergeant, all of whom are like 20-year cops, ripped me a new one. That the general public lacks education on basic civics, nutrition, and economics, banking/saving/spending/investing/etc. Seems as though most are adrift with what is happening around them in the world because they are so distracted. It's a bad omen. That a free press is essential to our great American democratic system. February had 28/29 days. My fiance tried to convince me that's not common knowledge. When my sister was in college, we had to explain to her that narwhals aren't fictional creatures and that calling them the unicorns of the sea was just a reference to their horn. My mom recently brought home a piece of a horn from a museum to show her as a joke. I went to the Definition Leopard/Journey concert at Fenway a couple weeks ago. My dad sat next to me at the show. There was a huge screen behind the bands that was constantly showing shots of the band members. The next morning, I'm in the kitchen at my dad's house making coffee, and I hear him say, "Oh wow, did you know Definition Leopard's drummer only has one arm?" Somehow, he not only didn't know that, but also didn't catch it during the almost 2 hours that Definition Leopard was on stage. That dandelions and those little white puffball flowers are the exact same thing. My 55-year-old mother-in-law and wife had no clue when I told them. Is this what happens when we grow up in cities? Tea is stored in the balls. Personally, meeting and spending time with someone who I found out couldn't read was weird. I realize that not everyone on the planet can, but it is different when it becomes a reality to you. Just last month, my BF and I were playing Super Mario. We were in a haunted mansion, and he kept getting attacked by the ghosts. I just keep yelling, "Turn around. Look at the ghost. Stop moving, turn around. Face the other way." He's like, "What?" In like, "Babe, if you look at the ghosts you know they will stop moving towards you, right?" He had no idea. I was floored and questioned if he truthfully had beat the game before. Thought everyone knew to look at the ghosties. My ex-wife is from Ohio. When we moved to Alabama we drove past some cotton fields. She asked what they were. After I told we even stopped to pick one of the blooming tufts, she told me that she was taught in school that sheep herders drove their sheep through fields of thorn bushes, then sent people, slaves, into the thorns to retrieve the balls of fur. I never had the nerve to ask her where she thought wool came from.